Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world. This is part 2 of this episode. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Link in the description.
Okay, and we're back for part 2. I'm here with Gorish, and who's the founder of Sybill. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend you do that. It gives a lot of context to what we're talking about still and what we're going to be talking about. So go and watch that. Come back. We won't go anywhere. We'll still be here. So we were just talking about some really interesting stuff there. We're really just hypothesizing about the future more than anything else. But you did also explain a bit about Sybill and kind of what led you to the initial idea and then how that evolved over time, and the really exciting place that you guys are now at which is kind of really you're on the precipice of kind of a new the next generation of your products and so on. So I suppose what I want to ask you about is being at Series A. Like that's, it must be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, but it must be quite a daunting prospect to be at that stage. It's a significant turning point for any startup, right? And you've raised a not insignificant amount of money. What does that mean for you? Like looking at that now from a founder's perspective, from a CEO's perspective, as someone that's got here for the first time to this particular stage, and presumably now having a lot of investors to answer to, a big boardroom, and employees and all of that. How does that make you feel, essentially, is what I'm getting at, and what are you doing to kind of ensure that you are confident in the decisions you're making and the direction you're pulling everyone in, now that you have probably more people than ever relying on you to make those right decisions? Not to remind you of the scary nature of it or anything, but it's an interesting thing, isn't it?
For sure. It's unique because for us, for the first 3.5 years of our existence, we had raised only $3 million, right? $3.5 million. And the Series A itself was 3 times that size for a smaller period of time and with a much faster growth rate. We went from 12 people in the team to 24 people in the team in like 2 months. It's a lot of new folks, new faces, that new way of working. We had to change a lot of, we could not be a hacky company. When we started, we were like 4 people living in a same house, working day in, day out. Like the nights were company talk, the days were obviously company work, and everything in between was company. And now it's like you need to keep the team on the same page. You need to ensure everyone understands. You need to involve them as part of the decision-making framework. They need to be motivated. They need to be inspired, and so on and so forth. I think the one thing that struck me over and over again was like how important the team is to building this. Like we're talking about AI and how AI is going to do this and do that. But at the end of the day, from a company building perspective, it's still the humans that are going to do the job. Hopefully using AI than non-using AI. My focus has been, how do I get the best folks in the team? And it's not an easy job to convince someone because the best people are typically not looking. But how do you convince someone to leave their likely cushy jobs and come work with us in a very scrappy, lots of things being figured out kind of environment? But if we can do that even for one role, what we have seen is it transforms the overall department, that specific area, completely. And that's one thing which is both a top of the mind thing always, and it is probably going to remain top of mind for another 5-6 years as we build this company out.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because of you're kind of touching on something which I've talked a lot about on this show, which is the cultural shift that happens at this stage, right? Like you said, that the group of you working in a house all day, all night, and there's that very much that scrappy nature, that startup mentality, and then how it has to start shifting to being more structured. I mean, that can be a bit of a culture shock to the original team members. Like, how are you finding that yourself, on a personal level, that shift? Are you quite comfortable with it? Are you still finding your feet with it?
Oh, we are still finding our feet for sure. We had a survey recently where we are what is the biggest and red flag in the company right now? And the biggest thing was like communication. Like
Right.
it was like communication, communication, and communication
Yeah.
all across. Like everyone individually knew what is happening, but no one knew what other people are doing in their team.
Mm.
Sometimes they didn't know what other departments are doing, where are we heading towards in those other departments. Uh, it has been a very interesting problem to solve for because one, people results come not instantly, but after a period of time. Like if I
Mm.
put uh, like it's not like a sales or an engineering problem. Like if I have the solution, I'm going to implement it, it works, it doesn't work. It's a much different kind of problem. So I'm going to know 3 6 months later whether that worked or not. And in a startup time scale, that's like 50% of a company's journey. So you can't
Yeah.
wait for that long. So you have to make a lot of hypotheses. I try to get advisors to help me with this. Obviously, other founders that have gone through the same journey is like, that's so critical. But yeah, to answer your question, it has been not easy to say the least.
Mm.
And
Well, there's no hard and fast sort of
there's no hard and
rule,
fast.
or
That's the
yeah,
other part.
it's there's
Very
no perfect way.
contextual.
Yeah, it is, and it's like you say, you can do something, change something, and maybe see the results in 6 months, maybe not. But that's part of it, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
there's no formula for it because every organization, the individuals within it, their personality, the way they work, the jobs they're doing, everything is different. And then of course your vision is sitting on top of that, and what everyone is trying to achieve is sitting on top of that. So it's there is no silver bullet basically to solve that. Everyone just has to do their best, and that's all that you can ask for. Really. So are you guys all in the same office? Are you working as a distributed organization? Is it half and half?
Yeah, it's more like half and half. So we have an office in Mountain View here in the Bay Area.
Mm.
That's probably having 50 to 60% of the team. And
Right.
then the remaining is scattered all across the world, from India to Europe to Canada.
Mm.
And that's part of what makes the whole thing more difficult.
I was going to say that adds a
Because
layer of complexity too. Yeah.
if you have the entire team hybrid, you have to do things like entire team remote, you have to do things one way. If the entire team is in person, it's probably easier, but you can do it one way. But then with a hybrid team, you have to manage both of them together, and it's typically not an easy job to do so. But then our philosophy is like hiring the best people wherever they are. So we needed to have this kind of a hybrid system. So it was like a pros and cons kind of trade-off in order to do this.
Yeah. I think it's worth the trade-off. I mean, you can. It's a problem that you'll undoubtedly be able to solve. Sorry, my TV behind me has just decided to turn for some reason. Stop that. There we go. But yeah, I can imagine that adds a significant layer of complexity to it. But do you see? Well, I know you were saying obviously you're going to be using your own tool internally to maybe help with that, but do you see AI actually being able to further help with something like that from an internal perspective?
Yeah, for sales teams, we have seen like we use our tool to record all kinds of meetings and then go deeper into every kind of meeting, including the first conversation we had. I was able to go back into that conversation, ask a couple of questions just to give me a revision of like, okay, what happened in the last call with Greg. But one of the things that we realized within sales is like every conversation will probably have 2 or 3 different stakeholders, which are internal and not customer facing, and they will keep on changing. So if I can send an update to each stakeholder, and they care about different kind of information from the conversation. So one of the actions or assistance we are working on is like from each conversation, can I send an email or a note to the product team? Can I send a note to my CSM or my deal desk? Hey, here is what transpired in this conversation. This might be interesting. So a feature request, a marketing positioning kind of discussion, a competitive intelligence kind of thing, or a deal desk, a legal request going to each of these individuals so that the rep doesn't have to do it. And these teams are not reliant on the rep to do it because every single product team in the world wants their sales rep to keep on telling them product features. But who's got the time? It's like not an easy job. Like this, we call this internally a continuous continuous information flow within the organization. And like that's like one part of the problem you can completely resolve. Like managers are spending probably half of their time doing just this between senior execs and reps and other layers on the same level, like RevOps and whatnot. But it's like something so. This is where people are going towards as the first use case for AI because it's a much more simpler thing to execute on.
It's essentially community management, right? To an extent. Like,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which I'm actually, I advise a startup that's doing something similar that hasn't quite got ready for its B2B offering, but and wants to do that. Funny enough, but they will. But they're actually working more with online communities for now. But there's going to be that. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. And one of the main reasons why I'm so bullish on them, to the point where I decided to invest and become their advisor. But there was something else you mentioned there that piqued my interest too. Yeah, there was another crazy idea of mine that I've had over the last few months, especially, is it was born out of what you said there. You know, I've been involved with a few different companies that have a similar approach to you with that you leveraging AI and some automation to ensure that there's this continuous stream of information that's getting circulated, that all of the main points of information are shared automatically, and it keeps everyone in the loop, especially on, you know, from a senior level and all that kind of thing. But there's one problem there that I've seen happen time and time again, is that it relies on people reading those updates. And what I noticed is that, you know, and I'm guilty of this too, you know, even when my own company, I'll get an update, an email or a Slack notification of that, and if it's constantly like every day or whatever, I'm just like, there comes a point where I stop, and that's me at the CEO level. I can only imagine what everyone else must be thinking when, you know, to go back to your point early in part one about, like, you know, how salespeople are so overwhelmed. It's like, I haven't got time to see the update of what Chris has done in this department, and what, you know what I mean, or like there's an end of week all hands update on the product. It's like they don't read. They're just like, just give me the updates, man.
Yeah.
Like, and so I've had this idea for a while now. Maybe you can go and build this in your spare time. Of just having a chairperson, a digital virtual avatar chairperson that can come onto a meeting and just give us the overview. Right? If this is someone that some entity that has, you know, all of the tentacles in everything anyway, just, you know, consolidate it, give us the headlines, but in a meeting, because I think there's something very human about the way we like to absorb information, and we're more likely to absorb it from another human being on a meeting. And plus, we like the excuse to get together. We like the excuse to stop work and to get together and have a meeting and have a bit of chit chat. But then if there's some AI, we can go, right then, AI, tell everyone what we need to know. And then it can tell us all succinctly. It said, right, well, you guys for your department, this has been happening and it's been very interesting. And then this happened. And then you guys over there for this department, this has been happening and it's all great and da-da-da. And then everyone's having a good time. They have a good laugh. And then they move on. I think that you're far more likely to get a team, you know, a team engaged in that scenario than just, you know, here's a Slack update. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
information overload is a real problem. Like, I wake up to 200 Slack messages a day.
Right.
And I can't,
and then
like,
email
even skimming through that, even skimming is like a problem.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like, and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
And I really wish Slack does something about it. But like, if we have that digital chairperson, it's like a dream come true for me personally. Like, oh my God, that would be a game changer.
The thing I think we're missing in and this is kind of my point in what we're talking about here, is with AI, with automation, all that, it's not about, at least from my perspective, it's not just about, okay, how can we solve the problem of getting this information or even filtering it, making it relevant? There's a really important missing piece here, which is human psychology. How do we like to actually digest that information in the first place? And okay, reading is fine, but there comes a point where it removes a lot of the reasons why we like to communicate, right?
Yeah.
There's obviously an interpretation issue and so on there too, but you know, we like to hear a human being actually talk. Like for example, I could take the transcript of our conversation today and turn it into an article, and I do that sometimes to promote this, to promote the episodes. But at the end of the day, no one's going to want to sit there and read the transcript or even an article based on the transcript. They're going to want to hear us talk or watch us talk, you know. And I think that's something we have to be very mindful of when we speak about AI and the tools that we can use to make things more efficient. Yes, while it might create efficiency, it might also create isolation.
Yeah,
we have to be careful.
We take a different approach to this problem, but it's a really, really good point. Like, I call it internally the passive assistance format. Like
Right.
you have like you are providing assistance, but it's like basically surfacing information, insights, all of that, but every day.
Hmm.
At some point, the rep is going to say, okay, this is too much. I don't know. Like, I need to do something with that information. So
Right.
we think of it like, okay, if you have the information, then do the task that depends on that information. If I know what the customer wants, create the deck that talks about what the customer wants, as opposed to give that information to the reps and have them create the deck.
Right.
It should be an automated process. If I know the payment details, create that order form in Stripe, not have the rep create that order form in Stripe. And so that conversion of passive assistance to active assistance, that loop is exactly hinting at the same thing, because we have been doing call summarization for now over 2 years. It's like people have definitely people when they want to watch a call recording, instead of watching that call recording, they would go to the call summary these days for sure. But even that is not enough. You can take that to the next level by automating the action on those summaries,
Right.
which is what makes it a huge opportunity. Otherwise, it's like everyone and their brothers are doing this. Like,
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on, because I've got my meeting AI, whatever it's called, summary tool linked with my task app. And so if I say in a meeting, like, I'll get that over to you by whatever,
yeah,
then it will make a task and it will put it in my task app. That was great to begin with. But
yeah,
now my task app is a fucking mess. Like, it's got thousands of things in there
yes,
because of course, what it's now got relying on me to do is A, check it, and then B, tick off when I've done
yes,
something. And so it's just easier for me to just try and remember, and then
yeah.
and forgetting is okay because someone's going to remind me. So it's just like, I don't look at my task app anymore because it's a
Such
nightmare.
such a beautiful example, man.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's still useful to have every now and then to go back, and less so for the task app, but to go back to, like you said about before this call, to be like, okay, well, what did we talk about before jumping on the next call? But it's very rare, and it's usually just like, remind me what we talked about, bring me up to speed, kind of thing.
Yeah, but imagine there is an AI agent which there exists in independent like clusters across, but an AI agent reading that task app, and for each task, it's like, hey, this is the information. Either it puts it for your review, so you just have to click a checkbox, or it automatically does that task.
Yeah.
It's like you would be promising things to people and you would be completing them instantly 5 minutes after a call.
Yeah.
Like,
that's the
reps
dream.
go through that process every single day, multiple times a day.
Yeah.
They'll promise 3 things. They probably fulfill one of those 3 things. And those are the good reps. Like, and the bad reps are probably worse off. Like, and you do that 15 times, like 5 times a day, it's 15 tasks that adds to your list. Like, I face this consistently. Like, every new meeting solves like adds new things to my plate as opposed to solving things.
100%. When I was a sales rep, like, I'd be laying in bed at like 3 a.m. I was like, oh shit, I forgot to send that email, and I would run downstairs. It happens all the time. That would be very nice to just have in my life, to be honest, as a CEO. But going back to the Series A thing though, briefly. So you mentioned you're out in the Bay Area. So I'm curious to know, obviously being based in the UK and also being a founder that's going to be raising our seed soon as well. From a very selfish perspective, do you think that being in the Bay Area is like a fundamental sort of really a sort of a key to you having successfully got to the point that you are in terms of raising, being able to have access to the kinds of funds or kind of customers, etc.? Do you think that you really couldn't have achieved what you've achieved if you hadn't been where you are?
I don't think it's more about the funding or the customers. Customers, you typically need to be in the overall similar geography. And for us, like, we have customers across 30 different geographies.
Right.
UK is the second largest base for us. 30 different countries, sorry. Again, goes for the fundraising as well. Like, investors will invest where they find the right opportunity. I think the fact that we're in the Bay Area gave us good access, one, to talent, and second, to technology. And technology is available everywhere. It's just the information. Like, we hear about chat GPTs here in restaurants and like since month one. Like you go to a diner, you stand in a coffee line, you're gonna hear something about generative AI, this new tech, that new tech. Adds in a new layer, like more information. So that I think has been valuable. Our investors are LA based, the Series A investors, like they do have offices here, but primarily their office is LA based. To me, that's probably less of a factor. And the special thing about Bay Area is like it is a gold mine of information about AI and what's happening around AI, and everyone is talking about that all day long.
So it's more that you're like kind of at the beginning of the grapevine, so you can get you get access to that news about innovation maybe a little bit ahead of everyone else. Is that what you mean? Right.
Yeah.
I see. It does being in the Bay Area though in some ways sort of add some sort of, is it like almost a certificate in of itself to say, look, where we are, we're in the heart of this innovation. So do you think that that's, in some ways, maybe...
I personally don't believe it.
No?
I personally don't believe it. Like, I think at the end of the day, like, as you grow more and more, it's going to be your customers and your traction that's going to speak the most, as opposed to like backgrounds or Bay Area. It's like,
well, you would hope so. It should, like you said about, it should be a meritocracy, right?
It should be a meritocracy. In some cases, it does probably impact, but like I think the benefit that gets added, and again, personally, this has been my thought process. It's like the chance opportunities that comes are much higher than generic stuff. Like I can meet someone in a coffee shop and I can find them their work interesting, or they can find my interesting. And this has happened multiple times. And that opportunity I would not get, for example, in a remote rural area where I won't get that chance opportunity. And this is probably true of why like all hotspots in their individual domains. Like, if I'm in sales, for example, one thing we have considered is like opening up an office in Utah, because so many sales reps are based out of there that the likelihood that I meet a sales rep every other day, which is excited about Sybill, or I can make them excited about Sybill, is very high. I don't get that in the Bay Area.
Right. It's more techies, I guess, in the Bay Area. Techies, yeah. Interesting. Would you ever consider opening an office in the US, in the UK?
Hopefully, at some point. That's to be a multinational corporation is like one of the parts of the larger vision which we are trying to achieve. But yes.
Of course. Well, I'm sure the investors are relying on that, right? You've almost got no choice now. That's it. You've done the deal with the devil.
But yes.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, if you're ever in London scoping out office spaces or anything like that, then you'll have to look me up and I'll give you a tour. Have you spent much time in the UK before?
I'm not. I was planning to visit last year, but I could not. I do hope to get a visit this year and at least to scope out the city.
Yeah. So you've never been at all?
I've not been to London. I've been to Europe.
Yeah,
I've been to Europe, but not to London specifically.
Right. But not the UK at all.
Not the UK. No. Yeah.
Wow. Well, you've got to come. You'll love it. I mean, look, we've got an interesting startup scene. I would say it's obviously not as big as it is out in the States, but it's there and it's bustling and there's a lot going on and there's some great people and some great events that I take part in and stuff like that. It's an exciting.
A few friends have come through there. I know a company called Fixer.ai that was based out of London. Really good work that they're doing in the assistant space for the emails about the product. Yeah,
I had a slightly different topic, but I had Yuri of AISDR on the show not that long ago. Yeah, so literally that came out 2 weeks ago. That came out. That was like the first episode of the new year, I think.
Yeah.
Really great guy. I don't know. Do you know each other? Have you talked at all? Or
we are connected on LinkedIn. I think we have exchanged a few messages, but we haven't talked in person.
You guys should grab a virtual coffee or something together. Lovely guy.
It's a very, very interesting space. Like the AISTR, it's like booming. So many things happening.
Yeah. And he talked about some great plans that they've got and some really interesting stuff. But one thing that he mentioned though was, he's a 2-time Y Combinator founder himself, and he went through obviously being based out in Silicon Valley. He said similar to what you were saying about really just the access that you have. I mean, obviously Y Combinator itself is hugely valuable, but just being in that area, just being able to, he has described it as just being able to literally walk across the road, knock on the door, and that's a prospective customer, and just being like to say, look, we're building this thing, would you want to buy it? And as opposed to to your point, like emailing, like trying to set up a meeting and it being remote and jumping on Zoom or whatever. And it's just, he's saying just that access to those businesses and just having like Meta down the road and Google down the road and that, that kind of thing.
It's very interesting. They went to YC twice. That's typically not common.
Well, he went for two different businesses.
So that's interesting. We actually got into YC, but we decided not to go for it.
Oh, really?
So
wow,
it's very cool that they were able to like do it twice.
He said he just loved it. So you have to watch. He explained very eloquently why, but he just said it was just so valuable. He was like, it's a no-brainer. I've got to do it again. Like it helped his business so much that he was like, I have to do it again. But that's quite a bold move from you guys to turn down a YC placement. Like what was the rationale behind that, if you don't mind me asking?
I think for us it was at a point where YC is really big. The cohort itself is like 250 companies. We saw that there were companies that were competing with each other within the cohort. We did not want to raise. We were like already capital conservative. We were like growing the discovery, the product PMF journey was going okay early on. And then the equity component was way too high for the output that it seemed like. Would I do it if I were to start again? Maybe, but it's still something where, like, if you have the network, if you have the people around you, then I couldn't justify the ROI personally. Yeah,
it's not
speaking with a lot of advisors. That went through the process. It gives good access to early customers, and it gives good access to investors if you're trying to fundraise. For us, the latter was not relevant at that point of time. The former was, but then we were like, we already are getting a PLG love that we wanted from customers.
So you knew you'd figure it out. So yeah. It sounds like you're just further along basically. So it wasn't as urgent. Yeah, interesting. So look, before we move into the last sort of part of this, then, and I let you go, I'm curious to know. So you're obviously launching sort of 2.0, I guess we could call it that, in February. What's the plan for the rest of the year? I mean, what is that looking like? I know that's probably a very difficult question to answer, but is there going to be continued growth in terms of the team? And if so, what are the sort of main areas of focus departmentally, I guess? Is it still from a tech perspective, you still want to growing out product? Are you going to be building up your sales department, right? Or, so what are the key things that you've got kind of, I know I'm kind of almost asking like an investor now, but I'm curious to know where are these resources being put to from you, and what would you say are the things that the milestones that you really need to be achieving this year?
Yeah, definitely product is a big part of the growth. As we move from a passive assistant agent to an active assistance tool, product engineering AI is like the big focus for like at least the first half of this year. We do have about 750 customers, and that's growing nicely. So that's like going to be an area of focus. I do hope to get to a point where we have like close to 2,500 to 3,000 customers across in our space.
So is it, sorry to interrupt, but just while I remember, so is it the case that really from February, you're going to be going to your existing customers and essentially informing them of this new update and kind of then basically upselling them and saying like, we've now updated this as a new product or new addition to the product. Do you want
it's going to be part of the existing one.
Right.
We care a lot about because sales, you can easily build a very technical product and not have any salesperson ever use it. And that's the problem that we have seen companies run into. Time and again, we care a lot about adoption and making sure that the individuals are actually using the product. And so we already have good adoption metrics, really good adoption metrics. Our NPS today is 69.
Wow.
So like reps love the tool. They cannot get enough. We want to use that base while we are adding new capabilities into the product. So for the world, we are going to do more of a big bang launch, but from a product standpoint, it's going to continue adding on to existing functionalities and making that better and better over time. So we take advantage of that adoption cycle that we have built out. Like today we have customers, we have like Lenovo, we have Perplexity, we have some of the other largest companies, AppLovin, that are using Sybill. we do hope to add more brand customers over time. It's like the one of the biggest challenges, as well as goals for 25. Sorry, we're already in the new year.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges in selling in sales tech? Because I mean, it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy thing to sell to salespeople, right?
It's I think that right now the biggest challenge that I see, not just for us, but every potential company in the space, is like, how do you make the buyer understand at the first look that this is different? Like every company that's doing sales tech, like if you ask a buyer, they don't have a single clue about what they're like very blind. For them, all they hear is sales AI. That's all. Like an AI SDR company and an a co-pilot company and probably a RevOps company which uses AI. Like from looking outside in for a buyer, like I went to SaaStr and I heard this comment like, I'm hearing sales AI for the 20th time. And I'm like, no, but have you heard this? But probably every single company is trying to do that. So positioning and differentiation and brand building is like one hell of a challenge in this space. And making sure the buyers understand that there are differences in the technology, which is why we lean heavily on our customers and on a PLG motion to build this product out.
Well, and salespeople are naturally very skeptical anyway, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're skeptics. So that the majority of the time they just think it's BS.
Yeah, that's the other part. The trust is such a big component to a salesperson. Developers will try out new tools left, right, and center, and they are more deeper into the technology curve than a salesperson. So they know that the tech is improving, and what 6 months out, what is relevant, like 6 months out, things might be way more relevant than what they're today. But a salesperson, like that kind of sense or insight is still sleeping in.
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
So that's the other interesting part. One thing we are doing, like one of the challenges I've also heard is like a lot of the times what happens is sales reps are like completely ignored in many cases, either in companies or in just in general. Like they're taken as granted in many companies, but it's the sales reps that stories are like actually the company's success and growth happens. So one of the platforms we are launching at Feb 1st is like this human of sales. Have you heard of the humans of New York concept?
No, I don't believe so.
So it's like stories about the human struggles, and this is like Humans of New York is specific to New York. But we are launching this platform called Humans of Sales. It's not affiliated to Sybill or anything, but the idea is we want to publish and we want to share stories about sales rep and their sort of wins, their losses, their struggles, their learnings in sort of series of posts on LinkedIn. So we are starting to like connect with people that we know that have gone through some crazy times or that have like shooted way beyond their sort of status, and we are trying to compile that list of stories and share it with people. It's for me like a way to like you hear like CROs and VP of sales and like CXOs in general would get way more attention than the people on the ground doing the work. It's like we want to make sure those stories get heard as well. And then other people can learn from it, because when I started in this, I had no clue about sales to talk to thousands of sellers themselves to understand what enterprise sales is, not having a background in this process till date. So I think it's going to be a good way to share, like, you're not alone in this journey. It's like everyone is trying to solve similar problems and face the similar struggles. So yeah, that's another thing. We're calling it Humans of Sales.
I like it. It's a good concept. I mean, not least as well because of, and I'm sure this is part of your rationale behind it too, is because, ultimately I think sales reps have to be a champion of your product. and because of otherwise they just don't use it. It's one thing for a VP sales or whatever to go out, or like you said, the CRO or whatever, to go out and buy a license for something and then just say, right guys, we're using this now. But if the reps are just like another tool, like, they're not going to use it. But if they're excited about it, if they've heard about it, like, there is some, I think there's a lot to be said for sales tech really trying to serve the sales rep, as much as possible, whether that's through content marketing or through useful resources. Like HubSpot is a great example of that, providing a lot of resources top to bottom for sales organizations. But even at the sales rep level, like a ton of resources that are free, downloadable, whatever, so that, it's in people's consciousness. They're like, okay, this brand actually cares about us, and so therefore I have a reason to give a shit about them. Like, that's super important at the end of the day. They need to be bought in.
100%. Personally, that is selfishly one of the things. I think with the technology expanding the way it is, the human element is disappearing a lot from our lives. Like, there needs to be ways to bring back that element. I see this as one of the means for that, especially in a space where I don't believe, at least for a significantly decent period, that humans are going to go out of a job. Unlike, for example, let's say an SDR use case or something like similar. So
I think content is really where that's going to lie. It's interesting because there's so much happening with AI within content creation, but actually, I think because of the way that AI is working, we're going to see people get tired of that pretty quick. If not already, and people are going to want a lot more authentic, because it's entertainment, right? At the end of the day, it's and people don't want to be. I think people want honesty within their entertainment and integrity there, and so I think any business that's selling B2B that wants to create a content marketing strategy has to be very careful, I think, by the way that they use AI or just develop their entire content marketing strategy. I think actually putting out interesting, charismatic individuals who can represent their company and talk about things that really connect with people on a personal level and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's where they're going to win, especially if you're an AI company, because otherwise the inherent belief of you as a company is going to be automatically bad, right? To some extent, right? It's like, oh, that you don't care about people. But if you can really show, no, we do, and here's why and here's how, it just so happens that we're trying to make people's lives easier. I think that integrity and that honesty is going to be very, very important, especially as we're going to see such an arms race between AI companies trying to fight for the same customers. That's the way to win, right?
And it should matter.
Yeah, it does matter. It matters hugely. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, very exciting times for you, and you must have a lot to do. So we're going to wrap up in a minute, but before we do, there's one sort of final thought, question, challenge, I guess I give to everyone, or at least I've started to give everyone in the new year. This is my new thing, which is to kind of throw it over to you, right? Give you the ball, as it were. We've talked about a lot of things, but in your space, in what you do, either in the capacity as a CEO, what you see in sales and AI, whatever, or even something that we haven't talked about or isn't obvious, what would you say are some things that we're not talking about that we should be talking about more?
Gap, 100%.
What was that? Sorry?
Talent gap.
Talent gap.
Like,
okay.
How do you go from, how do you cross that entry-level barrier? I think companies are underestimating how hard is it gonna get to get experienced, motivated people, and that's gonna make so many things much, much different. And it's gonna happen in every single domain. This is one thing which, one of the things which keeps me awake. I can't get smart mid-level A's because they have not gone through an entry-level SDR position. I'm not hiring junior SDRs, but I do need to hire junior software engineers, but I do need to hire senior ones. But then 3 years, 5 years out, when the current batch of folks graduates, what are they going to do? It is going to be a very regressive system in case that starts happening at scale. And because of factors of cost and OPEX and CAPEX, it is going to happen. So, it's going to happen at company level, and overall, it will show over at the society level. And then at the society level, what's the value of a university education? We have heard this happen for the last 10, 15 years, but the problem is going to get much more real, much sooner.
That's a
than
very good
what we
point too.
probably
That
predicted.
we didn't touch on that when we spoke about this before, which is an interesting point. That there is a backwards knock-on effect to a degree too, which is that, like we said, if the value of a degree, technical degree coming out of that, and the expectation is ordinarily a minimum base salary of say 100k, if that drops right down to 30, 40k, something like that, well then the value of that degree has to change. You can't be expecting people to pay whatever it is that degree costs now if that dynamic shifted. So that'll have to change, which will means there'll be less people lecturing in it, which means there'll be less demand. So it has a knock-on effect across the board.
Yeah.
I suppose if we look further the other way, would you say that there could also be an equal problem in the experienced level candidates too, in the sense that if there are inexperienced, if it's that competitive and that it's so difficult for someone without experience to get those roles, would it not then make sense that what we would expect to see is people using AI to pretend to be more experienced? That we're actually going to see a lot of pretty shady behavior potentially from prospective employees who are going to be just doing what they need to do to survive, right, to get that position, and saying they're more experienced and then using AI way more to kind of, do you see what I mean? Like, is that also a problem, or as long as they're creating the same results, does it really matter?
I don't think they would be able to create the same results. If they were able to, then they're probably actually experienced.
Okay.
I think the whole idea is a real one, and we are starting to see that happening. Like every single resume that I screen these days, like has all the relevant keywords that I can imagine from a potential software, like or whatever in the domain, right? I do think it's a transitionary problem. Companies and organizations will shift to finding more relevant channels of proof for a candidate's worth, let's say, in a very crude term, to figure out if they are relevant. And I think the history, the background, the social proof is going to speak for that. The shady behavior will happen, but it will be a transitionary period before companies find out this, whatever that new means is. But it's a natural byproduct. Like anytime we have a revolution or a transformation, there are elements that benefit from it.
And there will be undoubtedly HR startups that will pop up that will solve that problem in an automated way. Yeah, it's that constant arms race of technology, right? But, I mean, it's interesting as well because of, one of the products that we have on our horizon way down in the future, but because we've got other things we want to do first, is this idea of a kind of interactive sort of showcase or portfolio for salespeople, where you can actually look at specific examples of that person doing the skill that they say that they have. So if they say they can cold call, you can actually listen and watch examples of them doing that, or closing, or them obviously removing anything that is private information and so on. But there's this idea that in the same way that developers have Jira, not Jira, GitHub, sorry. Yeah, and the rest of us just have LinkedIn, right? Or a graphic designer or an architect will have a portfolio. It's like, a salesperson, and I think this is really important in sales, even before the AI revolution. It's really important in sales because salespeople are pretty good at bullshitting, and so the amount of people I know that have hired salespersons saying that they were really good in the interview, they convinced me, and then I brought them on and they were crap. They didn't know how to do a sales call. So it's like, I think it's useful even now to say that there should be some way of just being able to look at someone's resume and there being a link that just says, like, here are the list of skills that I have. These are my scores of the skills that I have from all my previous managers and employees, and then here's all the evidence that backs it up. Like that's the real thing I'm excited about. I'm excited about all of our stuff on a roadmap, but that's the one I'm like, that would be cool, because then that's transferable to customer success, customer support, any customer interaction type thing. Like that's one that I'm really Well,
I love that.
See, that's a great.
If you ever want to partner on that, like, let me know. Like, that's a beautiful idea that you.
It's a great idea, but the thing is, we have to build all the other stuff first. There's an infrastructure element to it that's really important. You can't get to that idea, but it was one of those ideas I had. Again, it was like 3 a.m. It was like, wait a minute, if we've built all of this, then we can do that. We should do that. Like, and I just emailed my founder, like, it's like another crazy idea from Greg, but but then he was like, wait a minute, this makes sense. So well, I'll keep you posted on that.
If there's anything I can do to help, let me know.
Absolutely, I will do.
Yeah.
I'll take you up on that, because I do have some questions I might have to ask you in private anyways. Just as a founder to founder kind of thing. But yeah, but listen, man, we've made it. You survived having a conversation with me for all this time, and I really, really appreciate it, because I do know how busy you are. So thank you again for taking the time to join me. I'll pop obviously the information for yourself, your LinkedIn. Is that okay in the description if people want to connect with you? And of course, the website for Sybill. Is there anything else you want me to pop in there, direct people to, or would that be enough, do you think?
Oh, that would be good. I would share if the things are live before then, I would share Humans of Sales link. That might be something to share.
That'd be cool.
We are actively collecting stories to showcase, but it was incredibly fun, Greg. Great experience.
Wonderful. Love to hear it, man. And likewise, it's fixing great chatting with you and figuring out, learning about your story and then just sharing ideas and thoughts and stuff. It's always fun. So look, we'll catch up again soon. I have no doubt about that. Like I said, I am going to bug you and pick your brains on some stuff soon anyway. So but for now, you're free of me, so you can go about your day and the rest of your week. So have a great week, and good luck with the launch of 2.0 and everything else. It's hugely exciting, and good luck with all of the challenges that come with it that are also very exciting. It's a really exciting time, and I'm going to be cheering you on, man.
Thank you so much, Craig. It was really fun. Have a great week.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening and/or watching. Please like and subscribe, or if you are listening via podcasting service and want to show your support, consider rating or leaving a review. It really helps. See you next week.